Bulk pickup. Today, I'm going to bring you through my recent bulk pickup. My name is Kristen, and I am the broken masterpiece. I find pieces from all over and turn them from trash to treasure and find the masterpiece within. And this week's piece is no different. I was driving around my own neighborhood for bulk pickup, and I saw an entire bedroom set out on the curb in front of someone's house, and I was shocked because the furniture was not broken in the least. And they were just going to throw it away. I ran home and told my husband, and he grabbed our neighbor, and they went back to pick up the set. And we are going to jump right into this one. At this point in the flip, I had already cleaned the entire dresser set with the degreaser to get off any grime and grit from previous furniture polishes and for sitting outside for who knows how long. It didn't have any water damage. Thankfully, it had not rained. After cleaning the piece, I buff sanded all the details with 150 grit to rough up the laminate-like surface enough so that the primer would bond well. This piece was not solid wood, but it was solid construction and hardwood. It's a Stanley furniture piece, some of their old kind, more replica of the Georgian style, but still mostly just a laminate over hardwood. If you don't have a Surf Prep sander and you are ready to invest in one, you can get 10% off with my code in the description below. It has made furniture flipping so much easier, so if you're an avid furniture flipper, I would definitely invest in one. If you're not and you just need a one-time project for something for your own home, I would invest $25 into your basic orbital sander or square sander that you can get at Walmart or Amazon. I have links in that in the description below, as well as in the links for products in this video. As far as purchasing the sandpaper, you have your grits from 60 all the way up to the fine sanding that's in the hundreds. 60 is going to rip up your piece. So when you're using 60 and 80, it's mostly just to get off really heavy paint or something where you need to get all the way down and get a ton of damage out. But for this, we just need a scuff sand, so we want to work with a 120 or a 150. For furniture painting, when you're working with a shiny surface like this, you can't just paint over it unless you prep the surface. If you want your furniture to last, that is. And so with sanding, it's the best way that I found my projects to last for years and years, working with a lot of clients. The top is next, and I usually use a 120 to get into the really shiny surfaces and make sure that I'm getting any damage out. There was a few watermarks and rings on it, and a few areas where the finish was eaten through, so I wanted to make sure that that all got flattened out before I started priming. I do love foam pads when sanding over details like this because it's saving my fingers so much. You can get foam block pads. You can also buy on Amazon orbital foam pads that essentially do the same thing. They're just not as soft as the Surf Prep ones. Prepping takes the most time, but if you don't put in that time, your piece is not going to last. You're going to have chipping paint and it might not bond to the surface well, and your sealer might not bond to the surface well. So this is why I'm very thorough in all my tutorials to show you how much work prep takes. Because after this, painting is an absolute breeze. So the solution I have right here that I'm using is a tablespoon of powdered TSP that you can buy in the box at any hardware store or Amazon. And then it's mixed with warm water. I mix it up and it makes the best deglossing spray. So I degreased it at the beginning to clean it off before sanding, and then I degloss it after just to get all the sawdust up and to decloss any of the shine that's still on the surface. TSP is a trisodium phosphate salt mixture, so it dries out the surface and gets rid of any residual glossiness that's on the surface. I use a good scrub brush to get into all the cracks and crevices, and then a green sponge from the Dollar Tree to wipe all the flat surfaces. I then go over it with a damp rag to clean off any excess and then dry it with a microfiber cloth. My daughter Rosie helped me clean out the inside and vacuum up all the dust balls from inside the drawers and inside the furniture. For this piece, because I knew that there was going to be no bleed through as it wasn't real wood, I decided to use Kills 3 Premium Primer, which is less expensive than shellac and it's also water-based, so the cleanup is a lot easier. All you have to use is soap and warm water. I put it in my Flexio 5000, but you can also roll it out as seen in my video, Battle of the Primers. I only had to thin it out just slightly with filtered water to make it run smoothly through the sprayer. Whether it's primer or paint, whenever you mix in water into the can or a separate jar, you need to make sure that it's filtered, water, or bottled. And then you need to mix it for a while. You just want to make sure that it's not glopping up on the stir stick at all and that it's running smoothly and consistently every time you pick up that stick. The Wagner Flexio spray gun systems are the easiest to use in my opinion. So even if you're going to just use it for a few projects, it's well worth the investment because cleaning them is a breeze, especially when you're using water-based paints and primers. And it cuts your painting time down by like 1/10 of the time. Now, I know what you're thinking right there. What is she using? Well, you know I'm pretty frugal if you know me at all. So I'm actually using my dog's cone from a recent surgery. I cut it up into 4 pieces and it's made the best edge plastic for edging and protecting from overspray. You can absolutely spray with the drawers in, but I wanted to make sure that I got the inside of the drawers where you were going to see where the side was where it was stained. So on the frame. And you can take tape and paper and cover each drawer to make sure the overspray doesn't get it, but this takes a lot of extra time doing it this way. I already spend way overkill on my prep as it is, and the plastic worked great. But if you do get on any overspray, it's really easy just to take a wet rag and wipe it down before it dries. I let that primer dry overnight before I gave it a quick buff sand with 220 grit. This allows me to get the surface even smoother so that the paint goes on flawlessly and I don't have to sand later. If you oversand in any of the primed areas, you can always spot your piece with spray Rust-Oleum flat white primer. It has to be matte or flat. The Rust-Oleum primer is one of the best for touching up spots, but make sure that you use it properly. It's made from a blend of acrylic and all sorts of other things, and so it is not water-based, so you want to make sure that you are painting it pretty quickly after applying it. I ran my hand over the surface just to make sure that everything was smooth and clean, and after vacuuming it and all the dust, I wiped down with a tack cloth that's sticky and pulls up all residual dust to make sure that there's no dust on the surface before I paint. I had already washed out the Flexio Fine Finish gun from the primer and loaded it with Stormy Seas by Dixie Belle paint. I thinned it just the same to make sure that it would run smoothly through the gun. I do fine, light passes on my first coat just to make sure that it adheres properly and dries well. I'm not going to coat the whole surface, so it's okay if when you're painting like this, if you see any white pop up through the paint, don't go back over it. Let that dry because your second coat is going to look much better. The second coat is very exciting because you get to start to see your finished product. I was able to do a second coat after 2 hours of letting it dry. Since I had already done all the sanding work, I didn't have to sand at all. I did one final light third coat, and then I moved on to seal the paint. Make sure that you give proper dry time in between coats, especially depending on your climate. In my climate, it was really dry this time of year. There was no humidity, and so before I do the seal coat, I make sure that everything has dried properly. One of my biggest tips for beginners that I didn't learn until 6 years into this was to tint your sealer with the paint that you're using to give it a more flawless look. Especially if you're using light or dark paints, you only put about a tablespoon size in. I love these micron filters because I usually buy my sealers in the gallon, and this gets rid of any impurities that are in the seal coat. It also works well for paint after it's been thinned a little bit. You run it through here to make sure that you don't have any grit or stuck pieces of paint in your gun. Mix it super well so that you don't see any paint that's by itself. It needs to be fully blended in. Because I hadn't cleaned out my Flexio gun, I pulled out my HomeRite Superfine Finisher. I loaded that up with a polyacrylic seal coat, and I always test on my plastic walls before spraying it on my piece to make sure that the consistency is coming out right. And remember, you always seal water-based paints with water-based poly. If I tried to put a polyurethane on top of this, a polyurethane is oil-based and it won't bond to the surface at all. It will almost repel it. So anytime you're working with an oil-based paint or stain, you want to use a polyurethane, which is oil-based. When you're working with polyacrylic, that's a water-based seal that goes over water-based paints. I do 3 light coats of polyacrylic, and because they're really light coats, they usually dry within an hour before I'm able to recoat. My second coat is probably the heaviest of them all. I used Rust-Oleum Metallic Gold Spray on the original hardware because the original hardware fit this piece and not one handle or piece was missing, which is so great because it saved me so much money. Knobs and handles can be one of the most expensive things when you're redoing a piece of furniture, especially a dresser. So all in all, let's recap. I got this piece for free, both pieces for free. I used leftover paint from a previous project, and that paint was gifted, so $0 for that. I probably used around $5 of my polyacrylic sealer and around $1 worth of metallic paint spray. I used approximately $10 worth of primer and approximately $10 worth of cleaning supplies, tack cloths, and sanding materials. I reuse all my rags and I can wash all of those, so that doesn't cost anything. I use approximately $2 for the staging app that I pay yearly for. So my all-in on this gem was $28. I sold them within a week for $800 total, so a profit of approximately $772. This hustle has gotten us out of debt, kept us out of debt, and now we get to take our kids on trips to like Legoland and other fun places. So I hope this inspires you. If you have debt to pay off, get out there and hustle. This has been a huge blessing to our family and one way to teach our kids that we never say, well, we can't afford that, but instead, what do we need to do to be able to raise the funds for that? I didn't have a chance to set up my outdoor photo booth because my back was in a lot of pain and my husband wasn't around to help me stage these, and so I actually put it through my AI app that I love called Photo Room Pro, and I took these pictures right out on my driveway, and I was able to put them through and get amazing pictures that I then put on Facebook Marketplace. My theme for this year is work smarter, not harder. Thank you for joining me on this furniture flip. I will see you next weekend.